whistleblowers often experience ill treatment and at times are subjected to a disciplinary hearing. This is the view of the Active Citizens Movement. Well, they have now written to Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo calling for changes to the whistleblower legislation. But for more on those recommendations, the movement's Yashika Padia joins us now from Durban to give us some clarity on this issue. Ms. Padia, thank you so much for your time this morning. I mean, to say that the life of a whistleblower is never really the same after blowing the whistle is quite an understatement. Just from some of the data that you've collected and as far as what has transpired after some of the whistleblowers appeared before the Zondo Commission, what has life been like for them?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Yes, my organization, the Active Citizens Movement, has taken a decision to write to the Zondo Commission, and as we felt that there was a critical need to reform the law, and we have proposed several amendments to Judge Zondo with regard to the Protected Disclosures Act. The decision came because we felt that often, as you've mentioned, when whistleblowers do speak out, they face severe harassment and threats and persecution often from the side of who they've spoken out about. And they find themselves subjected to disciplinary hearings, sometimes criminal charges are even concocted against them. And we've found that there's very little support that whistleblowers then get from those around them. They often are found to be without jobs, they're unemployed, no salary, their families have to suffer the trauma thereof, and that there needed to be some amendments made to the PDA, and we are recommending that we have put in some submissions which we hope that Judge Zondo will take into consideration in his report.
And speaking of those recommendations, Padia, can you share just a few of them? Because as you mentioned, they include, some legal support, financial support, protection, but also what was some of the most important and critical recommendations that you had to put forward to the Deputy Chief Justice?
Yes, some of our suggestions was, to broaden the definition of a whistleblower, firstly, because we found that the current definition is somewhat narrow, and it leaves many categories of witnesses still vulnerable. We also have said that perhaps there should be provision for a specialized court for whistleblowing cases, which will preferably be within the ambit of the Equality Court. We have also suggested that there be fines and penalties for employers who are found guilty of harassment and intimidation of whistleblowers, and that those fines should be paid personally. Furthermore, we've suggested making provision for witness protection mechanism for whistleblowers. Currently, we find that the protection mechanisms in many cases are not adequate enough. And we've also suggested creating an appropriate funding mechanism to cover the legal costs of the whistleblowers. And that's an important point as well, because often the whistleblower is found to be without a job, without a salary, and they've got to incur exorbitant legal costs. But the employer, on the other hand, is still in their place of employment, still receiving a salary, and they're sitting in a business with all resources available to them, and the whistleblower is left on their own. So there should be some sort of funding mechanism that is provided.
Right.
And we also furthermore suggested formulating a code of conduct for companies and state departments to standardize and regulate the processing of whistleblower complaints and the fair treatment of whistleblowers.
Ms. Padia, I hear, you taking a stance in as far as ensuring that, companies, for example, are held accountable, employers with those power imbalances are sort of brought to book, so not to intimidate the whistleblower. But what about the public? We've seen in some instances where there could be a public campaign almost waged against the whistleblower, sometimes even their personal information being leaked online in terms of, further intimidating them. How do you think the Zondo Commission can address this?
Yes, we do feel that the Commission can offer more, in their recommendations, offer support or suggest that measures need to be taken now in our legislation to support these whistleblowers. Because not only are these whistleblowers taking a lot of courage to go out and speak up, to blow the whistle on irregularities and fraud, what we must also realize is that these individuals are saving the country. They are doing this to stop corruption, to speak out against fraudulent irregularities, and very often they end up suffering for doing the ethical thing. So, with the joblessness, many of them also have personal crises, as you mentioned. Their relationships collapse in some cases. They have mental health deteriorates, and their situation becomes quite dire. So we believe that if, our submissions are considered and the judge does include some of these points that we are suggesting and changes are made to legislation going forward, it will encourage more people to speak out and more people to blow the whistle. And we are facing serious crises of corruption, and this is one small step in trying to eliminate so much of corruption we're experiencing currently.
All right, Yashika Padilla, thank you so much for talking to us this morning, highlighting quite an important issue then as far as whistleblowers are concerned and their protection thereof. That is the ACM's Yashika Padilla. All right.